really what the biggest difference in an OT environment. They have much older technology, much older operating systems.
All right. Hello, everybody. This is Mark Greisiger with NetDiligence. Continuing on here with our cyber risk webinar series. Each month, we like to talk to an outside expert, thought leader about issues. And our job is to keep our cyber insurance community aware of some of the trends. These are folks that we support on a daily basis, as well as who my guest supports on a daily basis. And today I have the great fortune of speaking with my friend Vince Kearns. Vince is with Trend Micro. He's the director of cyber risk solutions. And beyond that, he's just a super good guy. We talk a lot at our conferences about problems and solutions and all kind of interesting things. Every time I meet with you, Vince, I feel like I learned something. So thank you so much for doing this today.
You bet, Mark. Looking forward to it.
So we're going to talk about a topic that is just so fascinating. It is about manufacturing facing cyber risk. And in our annual cyber claim study, they're always one of the top sectors facing cyber risk, especially ransomware and things like that. And that can be devastating to business interruption exposures and so on. So we want to talk about operational technology environments, the unforeseen risks that are facing manufacturing. And who better to ask that, Vince, than yourself? So what are these risks and how is it different from the IT side of the house?
Great question, Mark. And again, thank you for the time today. Love working with NetDiligence and all the great things that you and your team are doing. When it comes to the manufacturing environments and the OT infrastructure, it's always been different from the IT side of the house. And I was talking to a CISO of a manufacturing company the other day, and he calls it separation of church and state, right? Is that the IT guys are over here managing their environment, doing a great job. The OT guys are over here in a completely separate environment with separate goals, and sometimes they don't align. And so they are separated, which creates some communication issues within companies, and really what the goals are for risk mitigation. The perfect example of that, Mark, is that, this computer I have here, I get refreshed every 3-4 years, right? I get a new computer. It's part of a refresh. In an OT environment, you've got controllers and computers in there that are decades old, right? That are running Windows 7, running Windows 10, and that have vulnerabilities that are unpatchable. Yet that is a commonplace in a manufacturing environment where IT refreshes more often. So that's really what the biggest difference in an OT environment is. They have much older technology, much older operating systems. And some of these operating systems have vulnerabilities, unpatchable vulnerabilities baked in.
Yep. So Vince, you Trend Micro and your team, you're in a unique position, I believe, because you guys have been around for decades. It's got a great brand. You also have tens of thousands of existing customers, and you're seeing daily threats through all kind of existing solutions that you guys manage. So what does a secure environment look like today compared to, say, pre-pandemic conditions?
Great question, Mark. And when you hear the term air gap, so prior to the pandemic, these manufacturing environments could say that there's not any risk here because they're air gap. That means they're badged in and out. Nobody in and out. There's no remote access. There are no Wi-Fi connections in the environment. It was truly locked down, right? And during the pandemic, we know that you had to have remote access. You had to open up and un-air gap that environment in order to keep it running. And so today, I believe that has led to a belief that can't be touched because they're off the grid. They're no longer off the grid. And these environments are absolutely, they have Wi-Fi connections now. They have remote access, and the risk inherently for doing that with machines that we know have vulnerabilities on them is just could be a very a fruitful playground for the bad guys.
Yeah. I always joke, not joke, but we often talk about why can't we just go back to the 1970s? There was no internet,
Sneakernet.
for the infrastructure and these important companies, they don't need to be connected to the internet, it seems like, but they are. So Vince, let's pivot to what options do customers who have cyber risk, the cyber insurance companies who are our partners, what can they do to identify some of these risks?
I think it starts with an assessment, Mark. If you talk to some environment, they have a decent idea of their assets and what um, uh, what machines they have, but they need to do an assessment around what do you have, an inventory assessment. Here's exactly everything I have in my OT environment. Um, the computers, are they secure? Do they have an operating system with a vulnerability? The PLCs. PLC is a fancy term for a controller. In fact, that's what the C part means is that these things that are controlling the environment, um, sometimes these are 20, 30-year-old machines with 20, 30-year-old operating systems. And uh, you need to know, are they secure, right? That's what an assessment will do. And then the last thing and most important is integrate the OT risk exposure. So once you know what your assets are, you kind of have a good feel for whether they're secure or not, but integrating that exposure into your institutional risk management plan. What I mean by that is if a company has a risk management plan, is OT part of that risk plan? And if it's not, boy, that's where I would really talk to a security company like Trend, or we have partners like BW Design Group that will go in and do the assessment, that will also be able to tell you, here's your exposure, here's how you would close that gap, and really give them the options of what they can do in order to secure that OT environment, just like the IT environment has been secured.
Makes sense. And for the audience sake, on Vince's team is some amazing cybersecurity experts. I know one of the gents we were talking to the other day, Vince, Chris LaFleur, fascinating.
Yes.
So anyways, let's do off a couple quick more points I want to hit on. Like, what percent of manufacturing companies, in your opinion, you think have modern day security strategy solutions in place?
Great question, Mark. So I'm going to take the Fortune 100 out, right? The Fortune 100 companies that you've heard of, Coke, Pepsi, these massive environments, they're pretty secure. They've invested millions of dollars into a secure environment. But everybody else, over 90% of those environments do not have a modern security strategy, modern security solutions in place, and it's that's why I feel like that this is a big issue going forward. Is that these are open environments now, because remember, they were air gapped 3, 4, 5 years ago. They're no longer air gapped, and so they are open to the internet, and that means they're open to the bad guys with with threats, through vulnerabilities, and with machines that's just and infrastructures that aren't ready for that type of attack. So it's above 90%.
That's, it's unbelievable. So the final question I wanted to just round this conversation out on is, I mentioned early on, we do an annual cyber claim study. We collect 9,000 claims this past year with the cyber insurance industry. We trend that data. We look at which business sectors are seeing threats, causes of loss, the severity, impact, etc. Manufacturing is always, top of that list, or like usually number 2, 3, 4 in that. So knowing that these guys are a 2 or 3 number target for cyber criminals, why would you think that is?
They're easy to crack, and with not much effort, if you to get access to a PLC with a 20-year-old operating system with a vulnerability that's unpatchable, it's an easy target. And I was talking to Chris about this yesterday, about how easy would it be for somebody to do a mass attack on multiple manufacturing environments, and it's unfortunately, it's a little too easy.
Well, let's pause there, Vince. I know we covered a lot of interesting ground. I greatly appreciate you. And to any folks out there, if you're interested in learning more, Vince is easily reachable. We will post his email address in this conversation. Vince, I look forward to seeing you in sunny Beverly Hills in a T-minus 3 or 4 weeks. We'll continue the conversation at our next conference. Thank you, everybody.